Andrew's perspective. "Are you out of your mind?" I hissed to Ulmiel, struggling to comprehend the sheer suicidal audacity of attempting to take over a literal Dyson sphere. "Finality has millions of soldiers on board. There's no chance we can fight through them." Regarding my quiet outburst with a self-satisfied smirk, Ulmiel maintained an air of confidence as he spoke. "On that we can agree, at least." He concurred with the Iragon equivalent of a shrug. "That's why you won't be the one fighting through them." Clearing her throat in an effort to gain our attention, Vavi correctly took my ensuing silence as permission for her to speak. "I appear to be on the wrong current here. What precisely is finality?" she asked patiently. "Finality is a weaponized Dyson sphere designed to decimate planets and take on entire fleets," I told her, deciding to keep my explanation concise to avoid totally derailing the conversation. "Why would your people even build something like that?" Vavi squawked angrily at Ulmiel, her reaction entirely fair given the Iragon's propositions of peace. "As far as our leaders say, it was constructed for the protection of the Empire," explained Ulmiel, his tone suggesting some degree of doubt regarding this excuse. "They don't know for sure what's lurking amongst the stars, so they figured it better to be safe than sorry. Coincidentally, it just so happens to make an excellent tool of intimidation, a way to force new species into capitulation." If I'm to be completely honest, both explanations seemed entirely plausible from a purely utilitarian standpoint. If Zemera was right about other civilizations having access to solar harnessing spheres, then it made complete sense to build such a thing for the purpose of protecting the species they, at least in theory, cared about. Original purpose aside, at least this particular machination of the Iragon could be played to our own benefit. Regardless, how the hell are we supposed to take over a megastructure like that? Simple, actually. Ulmiel grinned, producing his personal communication device, and with it displaying a hologram representing some kind of robot. "This is the schematic for an experimental Iragon combat android. If you can upload this into the sphere's control database, Baoth can use its factories to fabricate an army. They can keep the sphere's guard force distracted while you slip in and give him control." "And just where am I supposed to find that database?" I asked, knowing damn well that things couldn't possibly be as easy as this recalcitrant was making them out to be. For a moment, Ulmiel's facade of confidence seemed to slip away, unveiling beneath it an uncertain expression. "Therein lies the problem," he confessed, his gaze momentarily shifting skyward as though looking up to the sphere itself. "In order to bypass the security systems and upload this schematic, you'll need to access the database from a council member's computer, all of which are only accessible from their headquarters on Tesser." That sounded about right. Surely it wouldn't be so easy as the last time I snuck away to access an Iragon computer. How exactly am I supposed to even get there? "The good news is you've already completed the first step by making that deal with the council. Make no mistake, they've already decided to go against your wishes and do as they normally would. That being said, if you do well enough here to get at least 2 council members into an undecided position, they'll call you forth to Tessir to make your case personally. There you can access the database and upload the schematic. Simple enough, right?" "Wait just a moment," Vavi chirped, her feathers all of a sudden standing on end. "Your plan is to have Andrew go before an Imperial Council to make our case only to then go behind their backs and upload those schematics?" Disregarding entirely the concern within her voice, Ulmiel simply shrugged. "That would be the gist of it." "No, absolutely not!" she squawked angrily, suddenly interposing herself between Ulmiel and I. "If Andrew gets caught, there's no telling what they'll do to him. We have to find another way." "Unfortunately, there is no other way. If your human friend does not do this, then you both can say goodbye to your home planets as you know them." This explanation, however, was not sufficient to convince Vavi. Immediately, she began to offer up spurious plans and ideas for how our mission could be completed without placing me in harm's way. None of them would work, however, for reasons either already known or promptly explained by Ulmiel. "Vavi," I sighed, gently placing my palm upon her plumage and lightly ruffling it with affection. "I'll do my best to remain safe, but we have to do this." "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me," Vavi cooed sadly before taking me into a warm embrace. "Please don't let our time together end because of some Worthless plan. I won't. We'll figure this out. Together, I assured my Koffel partner. More than anything, I wished things had been different. I wished we'd never sent rovers to Ulmara. I wished my journey could have just stayed on this planet. Fate, however, cares not for our wanton wishing. Regarding our display of affection with a sad smile, Ulmiel sighed as in the distant Zemera could be heard calling him back to their ship. "All right then," he concluded, his wings momentarily unfolding in the expression of some emotion I could not decipher. "That would be my cue to get going. Let me reiterate this, Andrew. You have 6 months to clean things up around here, to convince the council that they should at least meet with you. Do us both a favor here and don't fuck this up." "I'll do my best." I nodded, unable to really say anything more as Ulmiel strutted back to Zemera's ship with a confidence I now understood to be false. When at last that dreaded ship returned to the stars, I despite myself breathed a sigh of relief. Though the nightmare was by no means over, I could at least take solace in a momentary lapse back into normalcy. Returning to Arkesa's flock of leaders, I did my best to maintain a solid poker face with regards to their host of new questions. I wasn't going to hide the truth from them, but I could at least pretend not to be on the verge of panic. I hardly considered myself to be a pessimist, but the dire nature of our situation was not in the slightest lost on me. Hopefully, I could convince them to go along with Bouth's plan. After what had happened aboard Aleph, I had a lot of explaining to do. Fortunately, the flight back to Zintril was more than long enough for me to fill in Salcom and Vavi regarding what had happened to me whilst gallivanting yet again amongst the stars. My two confidants listened intently to the tale, allowing me to fully explain to them what had occurred before finally passing their judgment. "Let me make sure I'm properly understanding our situation," sighed the Prime Minister, casting a worried sideways glance to Vavi as he spoke. "We're dealing with interstellar imperialists whose objective is to rescue us from ourselves, and you agreed to prime the planet for their takeover?" Meeting his gaze with an affirmative nod, I replied, "Forgive me if this sounds bleak, but the best I could do was buy us some time." 13 Estria worth, he snapped, anxiously plucking at the feathers on his arms. "You cannot seriously think that that is in any way enough time to prep for an alien invasion." Intervening on my behalf with this verbal beatdown, Vavi regarded the Prime Minister with a disapproving glare. "Which is why we have to act decisively," she chirped, taking a moment to ponder the deck of playing cards in her claw before setting them back down upon the jet's miniature conference table. Now was not the time for games. Ulmiel told us about those Providence artifacts for a reason. Maybe if we can get access to them, they'll help us in some way. "You're putting a lot of faith into this supposed insurgent," cawed Salcom amidst increasingly frantic fidgeting. "How do we know he's not trying to lead us into a trap?" "We don't," I shrugged, averting my eyes towards my seat's window, outside of which the clouds around us served almost to console my inner turmoil. "That being said, he's our best fucking chance to make it out of this." "I don't disagree." Vavi nodded solemnly, her feathers standing at half-mast from the cabin's latent tension. The actions we took in the next handful of months would decide not only the fate of Arkisa, but Earth as well. If I'm honest, the situation felt entirely hopeless. We were allying with a near-genocidal AI, and he was the lesser evil compared to the Iragon Empire. "What matters is that we plan our next moves carefully," I began, stating the obvious for some reason. "Salkim, when's the final invasion of Temenin supposed to take place?" "We have it marked for 1 Estria from now," affirmed Salkim. "Good," I replied, contemplating carefully how best to say what I was about to. "Once we invade their capital, I'll go to their largest temple and look inside for the artifacts. Once the coast is clear, we can excavate the items needed." "I am not letting you set foot in an active war zone," Salkim cawed angrily, his tone seemingly allowing for no further debate on the matter. Sliding across the booth to where I sat, Vavi offered me an expression I had in my time here come to recognize as sadness. "I agree with Salkim here. I can't lose you." "You won't," I told her confidently, my unwavering tone entirely unjustified given how little I knew about the Temenin's temple. "Listen, Salkim, I'm willing to do whatever I have to in order to ensure freedom for your species. The only question is whether or not you're willing to let me do what must be done." If I'm going to send our most valuable asset down into the fray, I'm not sending them alone. Much as I appreciated the sentiment, it didn't make much sense for him to send soldiers who could die far more easily than a human would. They'll just slow me down. Hearing this, the Prime Minister leaned back in his seat and clicked his throat with mirth. Always have to play the hero, don't you? He laughed, the mirthful sound battling fiercely against the room's tension for control of its atmosphere. Maybe normal soldiers would do that, but these ones won't. It was at this point that I remembered my earlier instructions for Salkim to create genetically modified soldiers. How many do you have? I asked. 2, the Prime Minister affirmed, holding up an equal number of claws. I'll agree to your reckless plan if and only if you take them with you, understand? Fine, I concluded, seeing no point in further pushing the issue as I slid past Vavi and approached the nearby cabinet of chilled ethanol beverages, the contents of which would barely be enough to buzz me, even if I drank the entire supply. Good idea, Salkim chirped, gesturing to a cabinet just below this one. Glasses are in there. Pour me a drink, would you? I'll also take one, Vavi affirmed, again picking the deck of cards and absent-mindedly shuffling them yet again. Retrieving from the lower cabinet a trio of fine crystal glasses and pouring into them 3 hefty helpings of whatever beverage I had randomly grabbed, I placed them upon a tray along with the bottle itself and carried it back over to the table. Much better! The Prime Minister cooed after downing his first glassful and promptly pouring another. I suppose I could hardly blame him. All right, then. Once we deal with Providence for the last time, what's next on the venue? Well, we need a fleet that can distract the Iragon. I shrugged, taking a short sip of the glorified apple juice in my own glass. Luckily, aerospace is my specialty. I can design a schematic for simple fighters, but we're going to need some serious manufacturing facilities. Immediately heaving a sigh of frustration, Salkim seemed for a moment to contemplate saying anything at all before at last parting his lips yet again. We need the Emergol conglomerate. If anyone on this planet can construct a fleet capable of causing a diversion, it's them. Last but not least, Vavi interrupted, dealing out 3 hands before imbibing a long swig of her beverage. We need to put on a good show. The Iragon demand perfection, and we need to trick them into thinking we got close. When I first proposed the 6-month deadline, I knew it would be impossible to meet. All I wanted was to buy us some time until we had a functional plan. Now it was finally starting to look like we did,